What is going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today I want to talk to you about Rezolve AI. I want to go over the recent updates from the company itself, some of the data points and everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Friday, it did go up 0.34%, recovering from kind of the pullback from their news. But $2.76 the low, $2.98 the high, and you did have okay-ish volume, so 6.2 million shares being traded, 8.5 is the average. So they did actually have news that did come out. So as you can kind of see, Friday morning was piggybacking more so from the Thursday news, but they actually gave some actual figures. So it shows Rezolve AI strengthens AI commerce play with 55 million acquisition of GroupBy, a platform driving over 30 billion in annual sales. So couple things. I always, like, coming from an investor standpoint, I always like to play devil's advocate. If something seems too good to be true, usually is. And so for this, for you to pay 55 million to get potentially 30 billion in annual sales, that seems too good to be true. But nonetheless, though, I think this should be good for the company. Bigger picture, website seems to be functioning, GroupBy and everything, so kind of in line with exactly what they have been doing. And you notice here, so BJ's and I think a couple others, they just announced that they got those kind of deals, so maybe there is some correlation there. So in case you missed it, this news right over here, so February the 5th, Rezolve AI kicks off 2025 with major brands. So you have Dunkin', BJ's, Kohl's, Discount Tire. So I think there is some correlation between that. But nonetheless, though, this 55 million doesn't actually state where it's coming from, whether it be cash, through just issuance, or whatever. And that has been, like, this is my second Rezolve video, and my first issue with them is that we are going in blind. And this is a kind of a rare scenario and somewhat of a negative. If you are a foreign-based company such as Rezolve, because they are based out of good old London in the UK, so England, it kind of has to comply with its local laws. So you have this, or I guess you encounter this more and more with Chinese stocks. They don't actually have to submit quarterly earnings, which is kind of crazy. You would think that them being listed on a American exchange that has to comply with those regulations, but with it being a FPI, they only have to do a 20F, so that's an annual earnings, and it has to be submitted 120 days after physical end of the year. So the whole SPAC did kind of take place in July, so we have 2 more months. Then we'll find out exactly what their balance sheet is all about, what they have for cash, what they have for debt. We're going to find out everything. Although they did recently do a kind of presentation through Sidoti, and yeah, it seemed fairly good. Didn't sound like they had overly too much debt. They actually did buy back their convertible debt, so that's at least showing that the company cares somewhat about its shareholders. So let me know your viewpoint on that. Aside from that, though, going over this right here. So shorts did return 122,000 shares on Friday. 6.51% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 2.68 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average is fairly high, so that is 315.25%. That's an annual rate, not a daily rate, so just be aware of that. And then utilization is 55.39. So very interesting stuff. I don't see this company being a full squeeze play or like anything, but it's good to kind of analyze. And I think even what I mentioned in my last video, this company is very good at getting deals and acquisitions. And from their Sidoti presentation, they even said, we have a lot of big acquisitions planned, mostly for the second half of 2025. So even though they did announce this recently on Thursday/Friday, there's clearly a lot more big things coming. So this stock is definitely very interesting. This is why it kind of got on my radar because of that. But going over some other things, options isn't all that popular, but so take this with a grain of salt. You have roughly around 10,000 in calls, 3,000 in puts that was done on Friday. 61% of all the options being done were bearish in nature, and not much going on here. So you only have monthly option chains. So again, not really much to really analyze. People are anticipating for it to be above roughly 250, but the gap is huge. So 250 to 5. That's exactly why nobody is really paying attention to the options, because market makers definitely need to add a lot more options and kind of different chains to this. But aside from that, these are all the transactions that did occur on Friday. So ultimately 3 buys, and you can tell that based on the bid, the ask, and the selling price. One for 101,000, one for 169, the other one for 132. So big money is actually buying behind the scenes. So that's always a good thing in my opinion. But aside from that, these are all the transactions that did occur on the dark pool. Similarly, 3 transactions, you just can't really tell whether they are buyers or sellers, because all transactions on the dark pool are essentially anonymous, but it kind of is linked to shorting. So that's again probably where this 122,000 shares did get kind of sold through. So something to keep in mind. If you are looking at trading it though, with that 292, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. So $2.21 is that next strong kind of support. 309 is that next strong target / resistance point. Aside from that, 397, 451. I can feel from their earnings, since that is ultimately one big mover for any company, is how much they have for cash, debt, and everything. Once they do submit their earnings, you're either going to see this stock get completely broken down to, let's say, $1, or it is going to recover close to the 10. So very high risk, high return reward play. So make sure you guys do your own due diligence at the end of the day. But aside from all of that though, I think there is a lot of good, interesting stuff from that recent presentation. I think that they're going in the right sector, the right field. They're good at acquisitions, and based on the CEO's previous history, very good at kind of making a solid company and then kind of selling it out off to some big name. And since Rezolve already has connections with Microsoft and Google, it is fair to assume that Rezolve could definitely grow to a substantial big entity, and then maybe just be sold off to Google or some other company. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pipeline for this stock. So this is why I wanted to do a video, and so I'll try to do a weekly video on this, just to go over some of the recent highlights and just my general thoughts on all that. And then of course, once they do submit their earnings, their annual earnings, the 20F, then this is where I'll do a little bit more of a full deeper dive, analyze all that. But until that does come, we're kind of just left in the dark a little bit. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. Give yourself a shout out if you own this. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What is your thoughts as well on this recent news? Do you think it's good, or do you think, from what my understanding is, it looks as though that it'll be good for them to transition to other markets, and that's something that they kind of stated that they wanted to do, and I feel like this has the ability to do that. So I think you might see more and more acquisitions, and that will be more for their future expansion. That's just how I see things, of course. But with that said, one final thing, if you're looking for kick-ass buy signals, pop over to my Patreon to give buy signals on stocks, options, and crypto. Many of them have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.